saying that they thought that the future of journalism was not in tablet apps. They thought that was a dead end for exactly that reason, that you're having to compete against so many other things. We see services like Flipboard, and I mean, until its death, obviously Google Reader, but RSS was one of these. This idea that the news will come to you. I mean, you talked about Twitter. That the news will come to you. The news is good. It will find you. Do you think there is a future? I mean, do you think if you were to launch a title today, would you launch a title as a magazine? Would you launch it as an app, or would you just have a website?
I think ultimately you ideally need to do both. I think tablet. There is absolutely a future for tablet apps. In fact, I think about 15% of the paid circulation of Wired in Britain now is constituted of people reading and buying the magazine on an iPad, and there it's enhanced with video and audio and various other extras, which of course you can't do in print. So it's again taking the benefit of the Wired heritage, editorial expertise, and applying that to that technology platform and distribution method. But I think it'll be one of the ways. Tablet apps will be one of the ways in which people consume content. It by all means won't be the only one. And on that platform, it's actually easy to get people to pay on a tablet or even actually a smartphone, because through the App Store it's a one-click purchase, whereas on the website it's always been rather difficult in a browser to get people to pay, partly because of the friction it's a hassle to have to pull out your credit card every time you want to try and pay for something on the web. Apple's made it really easy, as have Amazon. Other tablets are available, right? So we're also available there and on the Google tablets and so forth. But
is there a problem with an app that it comes back to this idea? Another word that's come up a lot is brand. If I'm trying to build my brand as a title, I've got to be part. Here's a question: do I have to be part of a discourse? Do I have to be something that is discussed by other people? If I put my stuff on a tablet, it's very hard to share that information. It's how do I that content sits on my app. Now I have to be slightly careful here, because there's a newspaper in the UK that basically has, as far as I can see, has cut itself off, and only it sits behind an impermeable paywall. It has a very successful. Well, it will tell you it has a very successful app, and it's been able to monetize very successfully on that area. But it's very difficult to access that content. Is that a viable strategy? Someone who wants to pick that one up. I'm not going to nominate.
I'll speak on your behalf, Ben.
Yes,
I think you might be talking about a newspaper called The Times, owned by Rupert Murdoch, who also employs you, which is why you're being quite careful about that. I mean, look, they've committed suicide with that particular title, but that is what they're doing with that title. They put it behind a paywall. They've got a loyal group of users who understand that brand, who are committed to that brand, and will pay a premium to access that. Now, that's fine. That's an operating strategy for that brand. But that's not one, in my opinion, which is going to see the Times being something which is sustainable 30, 40 years from now. It's an operating mode. It's the cash cow model of extract the maximum from. And when you're a journalist on the Times and you tweet and you have to put paid link, and you know that most people will end a journey in disappointment, or even if they are a Times subscriber, will click on a link in Twitter and it'll open a Safari browser which doesn't remember that they're actually a paid subscriber, so again they have to log in with really unhelpful credentials. That's really tough, but there's a bit of a reality check here. We're going through a seismic change in the way information is distilled between human beings, and we're all on this stage because someone at some point has employed us who had things that cut down trees, put ink in them, and then give them to people who sell cigarettes. I don't see the correlation.
I don't see the correlation between
why we're sitting here. The whole internet is interconnected computers communicating with one another, whilst there's the storytelling is at the heart of what we're talking about here, and the link from how you tell stories and you disseminate information is far more stronger than the medium upon which they were once published. And I thought James was spouting out part of his sales material for a second, because he just said, you get back with your magazine and you pour a glass of wine. And then GM, you spend £4 million advertising in our magazine portfolio, and it's great, and it does still happen. But the world is changing at such a dramatic rate that we have to be realistic about the time that we have to fight for our users to get our content shared. Because I would always say with Mail Online, our competition was Facebook. It's how can we take time from Facebook time, because so much content consumption is good enough. I'm waiting for my girlfriend. I'm at the train station. I've got 4 minutes. My boss has stepped away from his desk. he can't see what I'm doing, I've got 10 minutes. It's constantly about stolen pieces of entertainment time, no matter what kind of device you're using, whether it's a tablet, a phone, or your office computer.
Good enough. Is wired good enough?
I hope so. But I was going to say...
Do you aspire to more than good enough? Is really the question.
Of course. I mean, we want to be kind of an expert. We want to be the go-to person for the kind of things we cover. And speaking of social media, I don't think we see it as competition. I think social media does some things a lot better than traditional print media, and we want to leverage that and use that to our advantage because we have so many readers who are web savvy, obviously based on the content of what we write about. So we use Twitter to kind of ask our readers what they're thinking, but also, like recently, our executive editor tweeted and said, what are we not covering? What are stories that we haven't told that you want to hear about? And we had so many people, not just journalists, but experts like engineers or neuroscientists who wrote in saying, this is what you should write about. Here's a cool person you should cover. So we actually see it as a tool to help us do our job better and to be more than good enough.
This has all been a very Anglo-Saxon, UK-centric view of the world. What's the view like from Berlin? I mean, is this a picture that you recognise of the Berlin media or the German media as a whole? And Germany obviously has had a more diverse media landscape, doesn't tend to have national titles that dominate in the same way that it does in the UK. Have these sort of forces been at play in Germany as well? And what do you see looking forward?
Yeah, of course. But still, when I was in Russia and riding one of those fast trains, I didn't see any people reading newspapers anymore. They were all on their tablets. But when you go to Berlin and you take the tube, you see people actually reading papers.
Good Lord.
So, and I tend to see what Madhu said, that all these social networks are good sources for new stories we can do. And I think we still have people that come to us and trust us, like I said, because they're used to it. But I think we are a little bit behind in using all these news sources. I talk about my newspaper, and we have to make this change, but it's going to be hurtful, so it's very hard. And it's going to change the way we work totally. So this is I think we still have some time, but not a lot to change this.
Do you have time? I mean, we've had online newspapers since 1994. I mean, my one minor claim to fame was that I launched the Daily Telegraph's website in 1994, 15th of November 1994. We lasted 13 minutes before the site crashed, and we were then in the newest office block in London. And we had the fastest connection that you could get at that time, and that was a 64K line. And we launched a newspaper off the back of it. Not, as they say, it lasted 13 minutes. But we've been living this for 20 years. I mean, why are we still having this? To an extent, I mean, it's fascinating that we're still having this conversation 20 years on.
But you see, we're still selling paper, so that's where the money comes from. And I don't see we have the clue how we gonna monetize the digital way. So nobody, I mean, some of you pay, but it's not enough. So we're still earning money with a newspaper, selling papers, and we haven't found out the right solution for monetizing the digital edition. So we're still kind of printing. It's not going to take. We are under pressure, but we haven't got the solution yet.
I mean, I want to come back to this idea of monetization, because that's an interesting one. If you look at the record industry, I mean, here's the question: is the record industry the future for the newspaper industry? If someone can invent an iTunes for newspapers, the newspaper as a product was designed. Was a bundle. I mean, the newspaper was a very good distribution mechanism for putting into the hands of people in the morning everything they needed to know about what happened yesterday, and was built around a concept of thousands and thousands of 14-year-old school children on bicycles. who absolutely, everything you do in a newspaper works backwards from 14-year-olds on bicycles. And it was brilliant at doing that. And it was really built around a very simple concept, which was, come for the crossword and stay for the war crime. Because, if you liked crosswords, then that's why you bought the newspaper. A surprising number of people, like a huge number of people, bought it because of the crossword. And it said, oh, yes, a little Srebrenica massacre. Blah, blah, blah. So that was the concept. Now, the internet could absolutely just blow that thing to pieces. If I like crosswords, I'll go and get a crossword. And then when I finish that one, I'll go and get another one. So are we all basically clinging on, hoping that no one invents an iTunes? Because no one has invented a monetization strategy.
One point to that. The iTunes, the music market is now just a fraction from what it was.
Yeah, tiny.
So that's the problem. I mean, it's not the big business as it was. So there need to come new ideas.
Yesterday I heard Jimmy Mayman talk on the 10-year panel, and he said something interesting, which is, like music, journalism is going to change from kind of being a CD model to a single track selling model. And there are some interesting companies, not newspapers, but for example, Matter and The Atavist, who actually make a single track or a single story, and it's a package in itself, and that's what they're selling. So they're selling the deep reporting from an investigative reporter, but they're also selling like the beautiful infographics made by a data journalist from the New York Times or whatever, and it all comes like kind of like a mini book to your tablet.
God help us. Is Snowfall going to be the future of journalism?
There are other examples. Snowfall isn't the only one.
Let me ask a question. When I say Snowfall in the New York Times, who knows what I'm talking about? Did anyone? Okay, those people who saw it, how many people honestly, now give me an honest answer here, how many people read the whole thing, or how many people just looked at the pictures? Okay, so like 2 people read the whole thing, and most people just looked at the pictures. It was brilliant, it was lovely, it was beautiful. But to me, it was a great example of, there's a fantastic concept in journalism called the power of the unread word. Which is here is this piece written by somebody incredibly famous, and you can all go, did you see? Oh yeah, I saw that. Yeah, no one read it. But is that the future? Which, if it is, this is a depressing thought.
I actually don't think so.
Thank God.
The kind of trend across media around the world is actually away from buying single tracks outside of music, and actually to bundles. So in TV is the biggest media sector in the world, where people are paying for TV content, on cable systems or satellite systems, whatever it may be around the world. Typically, they're buying a bundle, and actually, News Corporation, Rupert Murdoch's been an expert at this around the world at bundling content. And actually, that's a magazine who's been around. Condé Nast has been around for 100 years. Magazines have been around for much longer. Newspapers as well. Actually, that is a bundle of content. You pay one price and you get everything. Actually, people have tried to sell single stories on the web, on tablets and so forth. It's proven actually to be quite hard. Never say never, and some smart entrepreneur is going to come along and give it a really good go, because I haven't yet, I don't think, seen the iTunes for journalism, and somebody could do that, I think. But so far the trend, I think, is actually in the other direction, in terms of just bundling content, and I think there's a real future in bundled content where people pay for it. There's also another form of journalism, which is free to air, right? Free to air TV, free to air, free newspapers, free magazines and so forth, and frankly free websites monetized by advertising. Advertising is a $500 billion business around the world, and it's growing quite nicely, especially in digital. So, that's not a bad solution either. So you can make money from journalism. I think you just have to change the way you've done it in the past.
I'm going to do one more question, and then I'm going to go to the audience. So have some questions, otherwise there'll be a slightly embarrassed silence up here, and we'll have to talk about the cricket or something. Okay, I just want to do one more question, and then I'll come to you. Yep? Oh, yes, please do. Yes, much better idea. What's your...
I've been hearing so much about what I hear is views from the developed countries. I think you just ignore, just overlook the developing countries where newspapers play such an important role, not just disseminating news, but setting the trend to policy makers and to the newspapers in India. I come from India.
Right.
And newspapers in India, they tell the government what is wrong, and they point out, and they have complete freedom that newspapers are taken so seriously. I think the developed countries
So so is that a question of distribution? Is that because it's the power of journalism?
The power of journalism is so mighty in India that it goes a long way in telling the government what is right, pointing out the mistakes, and we have complete freedom of speech. But the newspaper is considered the fourth pillar in India. It's completely given such importance that we are permitted to point out the mistakes and criticize the government with no fear of retribution.
Okay, but that's a power of journalism rather than the power of the newspaper, because we've seen examples in develop. I mean, the classic one, of course, is Watergate, but then we've had examples elsewhere. So my question to that is do you think that's because the newspaper still remains the principal way that news is distributed?
Yes.
Right. So that's a function of the journalism.
Yeah, and also I think because in India we still, it's a part of our kind of daily culture. We get a newspaper, we read it, and not many people are online. But here in say the UK or Germany, there's so many more people online, on mobile, on tablets, so they're consuming their news that way. So the question is, when people in India start doing that, are they going to still pay to do that? And then will the print newspapers have a way to make money? They will still be powerful in terms of the voice,
yeah,
but are they going to sell?
Okay.
Let me answer that
very quickly, because
I'll answer that question by giving you an example. A cup of tea in India costs double the cost of a newspaper. A newspaper costs 3 rupees 50 paise, and a cup of tea costs 7 rupees. And an household typically buys 2 newspapers at least, not just one. So for them,
James here is horrified. He's muttering under his breath.
So for the Indian household, a newspaper is the most cheapest commodity that they get. The most cheapest. A cup of tea, the most elementary cup. A breakfast costs 4 times, 5 times that cost.
Excellent. Okay, that's a very good point. I want to do one question, and then I'm going to come back to the audience. The assumption that we have made through this entire conversation is that the unit of journalism is a story. Be that a story in print, be that a video, a radio piece. In today's, is that how we measure journalism? Is the output of journalism, 600 words, 18 pictures if we're in the Daily Mail, and maybe a video track? Or is the output of journalism, like you were saying, the editor of Vogue being behind the velvet rope and tweeting? How do we measure what journalism is? Who's going to pick that one up? Corinne, you made it.
It's about information. It's about true information. It's about important and relevant information. So
it could be any of those things is the answer.
Yeah, and when you use the internet, you tend to go and search for certain subjects. You're searching for what you're interested in. When you buy a newspaper, you don't know what you get.
No.
So you get a lot of stories you wouldn't be searching for. So that's what I still think is
serendipity.
Is something that's surplus. If you go to the internet, you search. It's a completely different way of consuming information. So newspapers still to lean back and just be entertained or informed, and that is what we have to transform into the digital age, I think.
Okay. There is nothing that the media likes better than talking about itself, as you discovered. So a much better idea is to get some questions to the room. So there's yeah, you'll have to shout because I don't think we have any mics or anything. Oh, there is a mic. There's a mic coming. Did we get the mic back?
I'm Carol Stone. I was for